Hello and welcome, guys. We continue talking about communication skills, and today in particular we're going to talk about I statements. I think many people familiar with psychology already know this concept, but don't worry, I'm going to talk about new things as well here. So I statements. This is technique used to convey how you feel and what you want to another person without hurting them, without criticizing them, without blaming them, and so on. So many people, when we argue, especially when we get emotional, we get used to using you statements like you are selfish, you don't like me, you don't take care about of me, you don't do this, you don't do that, you never this, you never that. So we kind of blame the other person, criticize the other person, we say you. Um, and this doesn't lead anywhere. I promise, because normally if you just using you statements, you're making the person annoyed and irritated and angrier, and they can not even hear what you mean behind it and get offended and so on. So instead we get used to using I statements. When using I statements, you can convey what you dislike or what you like without hurting the other person and without making them feel as if you criticize them and so on. I statements go like, for example, instead of saying you didn't call me even if you promised, why you are so selfish, you can say something like, you know, I was waiting for your call yesterday and now I feel sad and kind of lonely that you didn't call, and my need for closeness and for trust and for safety is not met, so I'm feeling sad today. This is I statement. You are not blaming the other person, you are not calling them selfish, you are not saying you're saying, you're sharing your own emotions, you're sharing your own feelings, and this is much better taken on the other side normally. Another example would be, I understand that for you, for example, gifts are not important, but for me, I feel like you love me. It makes me think you take care of me when you give me small gifts, so please do this. So instead of saying you never give me gifts, we say like I love it, I like it. So these kind of I statements are basically universal. You can use them at work, you can use them in family relationships, you can use them in romantic relationships and friendships with your clients and so on and so on. And it's a wonderful way to convey something that you want changed, or just to express your emotions without hurting anybody else. Of course, if we get used to expressing our feelings in a violent way, like shouting or blaming and so on, those are like bad habits. It takes some time to stop using them. But once you practice it long enough, you will change those habits. Another important thing about I statement is that many people make, well, maybe not many, but some people make this mistake when they kind of hide you statement inside of I statement. It can sound like, I feel you are selfish. So basically what you're saying, you're selfish, but you kind of hiding it behind I feel. And I have a separate video in basic cognitive skills training playlist, and there I'm talking about how we can confuse our thoughts with feelings, and how often our thoughts pretend to be feelings so that we cannot dispute them. Like, for example, saying, I feel you are lying. I feel you don't like me. I feel like you are selfish, or something like this. Here we have a thought that is pretending to be a feeling. And it's not nice to be using this kind of mixture of thought and feeling towards yourself, but it's also not nice to use it towards others, because this I feel kind of form, it covers your actual thoughts. So make sure to separate feelings and thoughts, and when using I statement, try to avoid saying I feel and continuing with a thought. Instead, say I feel and explain the feeling. So, for example, instead of saying I feel you're selfish, you can say like I feel lonely and my need for attention and care is not met, for example. Also, I statements can be connected with your needs and can be connected with your values. So, for example, I feel lonely because my need for closeness is not met, or I feel irritated because my need for alone time is not met, or my need for sleep, or my need for rest, or my some other need. Okay, so we can also use needs in I statements. And this is also very useful because instead of saying that the other person is wrong in some way, you are just describing your own experience and your own needs that need some attention. And you are not making the other person feel upset or guilty and like they have to take care of your needs. Like, for example, if you tell them that my need for closeness is not met, they can still say like, I understand that, but now I'm very tired and I just want to sleep. Can you please go get this need for closeness met somewhere else, like talk to your friends or, something like that. Um, so yes, this is more or less the most essential things about I statements. So first of all, we use them to express our emotions and to connect our emotions with our needs and our values. Like, for example, if we value honesty, we're not gonna feel well when we find out that somebody didn't tell us the truth and things like that. And this way we can convey what we want to another person without using any kind of emotional violence towards them and without making them feel offended or criticized and so on. But you should be mindful not to use I statements as a cover up for actual you statements. Like saying I feel you are lying is not an I statement. But saying, for example, I feel anxious because I suspect you might not be telling the truth, this is more of an I statement. Like, it's not like you hide in a thought behind a feeling and so on. So this is our next communication skill, using I statements, naming your emotions, naming your needs, naming your values and connecting them together, and not letting your thoughts pretend to be feelings and not letting you statements to pretend to be I statements. And in the next week, your home task is to use this I statement, like, let's say 3 times at least, with somebody in both positive situations, negative situations, and so on. So instead of saying you don't do this well, you can say I prefer this or that, and so on. So yes, and I hope it was useful and wonderful for you. And I also want to pay your attention that it's not only what you are saying that matters, but also how you say it and your general like position in the conversation. I have seen examples when people are using nonviolent communication, I statements, but it all sounds so passive aggressive, it's horrible. So pay attention that behind all this you really have the intention of actually communicating with the person and not offending them. Yeah, unfortunately, offending someone is not part of communication skills today. Okay, so let me know in the comments how you find this skill and maybe tell me about results of your experiments in your real life. And it's also really useful to use even when you're talking to yourself and in your own thoughts, like this kind of I statements. If you have inner conflict or something, like your inner child wants to play games and eat ice cream, and your inner parent wants to finish work or something, you can also use I statements to talk to yourself. And this is, by the way, I think is the marker of a truly polite person, that they are talking well not only to others but to themselves. And yes, this is also very useful, that all of those communication skills, empathy, active listening, supportive questioning, I statements, and the following can be used with your own self and it's wonderful for your relationship with yourself, for your self-esteem, for your self-respect, and so on. Yeah, and I see you in a week. Have a wonderful day, and please share this video as always. Bye bye.